Hey everybody, we're getting set up. Minor technical difficulties. I think we're on. How's everybody doing? I got a new haircut. It's debatable in the house whether it's good to go or not. That would be George the puppy. Yeah, take him out. Take him out the potty. Never a dull moment. All right. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to get going with our questions. We've got quite a few. I'm trying. I'm already getting bossed around. All right, so let's go with our first question.
We'll just get started then. Hi.
Hi.
How do you introduce an e-collar to a puppy?
That's a good question. So first off, introducing the e-collar to a puppy, want to make sure that the puppy is old enough. It's not that, hush. Shh.
Sadie, come.
Oh, Sadie, are you being mouthy? No, down. You want to make sure that the puppy is old enough, meaning maturity-wise. It's not about the size of the puppy, but they really do need to be mature enough for the e-collar. So all of our dogs, 6 months and older is fantastic. Sometimes I can go a little bit earlier if the dog is more mature. So sometimes, like, I've had German Shepherds that I've started, I think, around 4.5 months, but typically 6 months is definitely old enough to get a puppy started. And then as far as introducing it, for people that are not super familiar with the e-collar, the best way to go is to use it overlaying the e-collar pressure with commands that the dog already knows. So using low-level continuous pressure, you'll turn on the pressure as you ask the dog to do a command that it already knows. As soon as the dog does the command, then you'll turn the pressure off. So using that low-level continuous stim and just layering it over commands that it already knows, is that, like, you'll say sit, turn the pressure on, the dog sits, puts its butt down, and then release that pressure. You can also use it, you don't have to introduce it necessarily if you're using it for corrective measures only, but we use it for training and corrective measures. So we use it to train all of our commands. But again, when you're introducing it and you're not super familiar with the e-collar, use it with commands that the dog already knows.
All right. 2, do you ever get woken up in the middle of the night by one of the dogs for any reason?
That's a yes. We have upwards of 20 dogs here typically, because we have 6 of our own, and then we have boarding dogs and the dogs that are training. And so typically we teach dogs to be as quiet as possible in our home, because this is our home and we need to sleep. And so if a dog is barking in the middle of the night, typically that means they need to go out. And so absolutely we get woken up once in a while when the dog is having an emergency, but that is my cue that the dog really actually needs to go out, and we get up and we go and take them out. So that's my recommendation to you as well, is make sure your dogs are quiet in the crates at night, or anytime really, as quiet as possible. Obviously here, with the dogs that are here, it's always a work in progress. So it is definitely balancing, okay, is this dog whining because they're bratty and they don't know how to be in the crate? Or is this dog whining and barking because they actually really need to go out? So here we're always playing that balance. But we definitely get them to a point where they should be quiet, and the only time they should be barking is if they're going to have some kind of emergency. So if we learn the dog's barks, within a few days, and we can tell, hey, that's so-and-so barking, they typically don't bark, or, this is weird, this is odd for them, and we're definitely going to get up and take them out. So we do get woken up in the night sometimes, and we share that responsibility, right, babe?
Sure.
Well,
We share that responsibility.
we share that responsibility. Since we both work at the hospital, we kind of manage it. You know, if the one's going to the hospital the next day, then it's the person whoever's not going to the hospital, so that that person can get a full night's sleep.
Or the person who just came off of night shift and hasn't slept.
Right.
You know, she likes sleep too.
Yeah, Emily works night shift a lot, so.
Any tips on how not to feel like a failure when your challenging love has some relapses?
First off, you're not a failure. I know who you are. You're not a failure. Secondly, though, anytime you have a challenging dog, Sadie here, Sadie, you want to say hi to the camera? Yeah. Sadie here is a very, very challenging. What are you doing? Very challenging dog. She is by no means perfect. I gotta say though, you know, when you have a challenging dog, there's going to be ups and downs. It's never gonna be. I can't say that it's gonna be smooth sailing for the entirety of their life, but you will find that balance of I know what works for my dog, and if I can hold them accountable here, then I know they're going to be good. Sadie, she gets only certain privileges because if we give her too much, she becomes really bratty and bitchy. And I really have to hold her accountable for a lot of things, because if I don't, there'd be no way we could bring dogs in and out of here and it be safe. Because she'd be going after them, she'd be guarding us, and it'd be a mess. So the biggest thing is like finding what works for you and your dog, and using what you've learned, and finding that balance. But you're absolutely not a failure. You're doing an awesome job, and if your dog wasn't with you, then he'd probably be dead.
That's why Sadie's still alive.
Right. Yeah. Sadie would absolutely not be alive today.
Yeah. And most of our dogs that we have.
Yeah.
I mean, and Pepper is a very classic example of if we are not firm on her every single day, she regresses readily. Like, without that leadership, she will just push buttons and think she rules the roost, and we have to be super firm with her, but she gets way more privilege by being restricted, so to speak.
Right.
But yeah, Sadie, Pepper, Frank was on the kill list. He's a sweet, sweet boy, but they would all be, any other home, they would not be alive. So you're doing the right thing. Next question. Bratty, pushy pup who is unfazed by a bonker and the bonker redirection, and we throw it hard.
So if we want to continue using the bonker, which I think is a great tool, if you're not going to use an e-collar, which that's definitely an option, the e-collar, you know, the e-collar gives you great versatility as far as like what level to use. You've got levels on it. We use e-collar technologies mini educator. So you've got levels 0 to 100. And for most dogs, that's plenty. And so without going to an e-collar, if you want to use the bonker, and I didn't talk about this before when I suggested the bonker, think about doing a pre-bonk bonk. The reason we do this, so the backstory is the guy that came up with the bonker is the same guy that came up with the clicker. Clickers work because the dog knows that when there's a click, there's a treat coming. How does the dog know this? And it's because you load the clicker. You do lots of clicks and then give the dog lots of treats. So every time there's a click, there's a treat. The same has to be true for using the bonker. The dog needs to know that when you say no, there's going to be a bonk behind it. So for absolutely no reason at all, you need to say no and bonk your dog. That's going to give your no value. So that the next time, whatever you're doing that you're correcting with the bonker, you say no, the dog's going to know that the bonk is coming and you bonk. That's going to give everything more value and hopefully discourage your dog from doing whatever it's doing. But again, if the bonker is not being effective, then we need to use something like an e-collar, leash and prong to correct the behavior. I'm not certain what behavior we're trying to stop, but there are, sometimes bunkers don't work. And so we have to use something else. And our favorite tool is the e-collar.
Next question.
Are you going to talk at all today? You got anything to add?
About a bratty pushy doll.
Yeah.
I mean, bonking, my aim has gone out the window. I used to have pretty decent aim, so I'm not super great at it.
Yeah, your aim is no good.
So I would go in a different direction. So I don't really have much. What are some signs that a dog wants to break from play with another dog? How do you know when a play is becoming one-sided and intervention is needed?
That's a really good question. A lot of people have questions about dogs playing. So the really obvious things to look for when dogs are playing, and I think, I want to go over this just because so many people ignore their dogs when dogs are playing. And the obvious things to look for are like obviously growling, snapping, lunging out, those sort of things. Those are pretty obvious. But the less obvious is like the dog hiding behind people, the dog running away, the dog doing like lots of circles to try to maneuver and get away from the other dog. And you'll see the body language change. You'll see that they're clearly not trying to play. They're more maneuvering to get away. It really becomes like, I'm trying to get out of this space. Sometimes they'll go near a fence to try to position themselves away so that they only have to guard one side of their body. They'll, hide behind bushes or whatever and, try play keep away kind of things. Those are kind of signs that the dog is like, I don't want to play, but also just they're not interacting. They're not doing the play interaction. So you do have to watch and kind of learn what is your dog's play behavior look like so that you can learn when they're not having fun. Hopefully that makes sense. Does that makes sense to you?
I mean, you can, if you have a more timid dog, you'll know that. But if you have a really active dog who likes to play but then is suddenly being bullied, you're going to see that change. It's nuanced with some dogs. Like our girl Freya loves to play, and she'll play with absolutely any dog that she's put with. But some of the bigger dogs can overwhelm her, and she starts to cower.
Yep.
And that's our cue that no, they're overwhelming her, back them off, call them away.
Yeah.
And she will retreat to us, but she won't initially retreat. We had to see that cowering. And at first we thought, well, she was kind of trying to play but no, it's a very clear cower, and we reel her back in and call the other dog off, and she's in a much better place, and she resets. And sometimes she's ready to go play, and other times she's done. She doesn't want to play anymore.
Right, yeah, I think I wrote that down actually, like the dog like laying down and being like, that is, sometimes dogs play bow or whatever, but the dog laying down to be like, I'm not moving because I don't want to play, or I'm cowering down on the ground. That's a great point.
Yeah. But she's playful, super playful.
Very,
so that's really when she gets overstressed. Number 6 is the best way to work on heel with a puppy, especially when the person runs 2 miles every morning with the puppy and an older dog that doesn't require a heel. When running, so trying to I'm reading this a little awkward. Best way to work on heel with a puppy, especially when the person runs 2 miles every morning with puppy and older dog that does not require heel while running. Gotcha. Trying to differentiate that between a walk.
Gotcha. So, dogs can have different rules with different people. It's really about being consistent. I always equate this to me and the kids. Obviously, dogs have a different level of respect for me than they do my kids. So dog's heel position is probably a little bit different with me. The dogs will be a little bit farther back than they are with the kids. And that's that's totally okay. So you can walk the dog in heels still, while the other person, I'm guessing this is two people, the other person can run the dog and not have the dog in heel. That's okay. It's not necessarily confusing to the dog. It's just you need to be consistent in what you expect from the dog. Now, as far as teaching heel to a puppy, we use prong collars on puppies as young as 12 weeks old, and it works really well. It's a super safe tool. Of course, we use the Herm Springer prong collar because that is the safest one out there. We don't like any of the knockoffs. And I've got a puppy healing video on YouTube that you can watch so you can teach yourself how to do it. And it's pretty darn simple.
Now, what if this was the same person who walks and runs the dog, and in run does not need heel? I think the same applies. It's the speed and the intent.
So you're saying if somebody,
If it's me
and you're,
who's walking and running my dog, but when I'm running with them, I don't need them in heel because they stay with me, and but we're having a little difficulty because the way I read this is that it's the same person.
gotcha.
So just so we,
Yeah, you know, you could potentially run the dog and not have them in heel and then walk them in heel. Absolutely. It really is about what you're holding the dog to.
yeah, it's the intent.
Yeah.
Hey, Cooper.
Yeah.
Will
He's
you
getting
please
it.
take him?
Is it George?
It's George. All right, our 9-month-old lab
On a
is
leash, buddy.
Huh?
Huh?
Will you come back if I
No, you need to take him on a leash.
all right. Our 9-month-old lab is particularly emotional. He's very dramatic and verbose, barks, but is especially vocalizing an odd yawning yipping like an Ewok or Chewbacca, paired with jumping into the air like he's got spring-loaded legs. When he senses change, he's likely to lose his mind. Yes, we can put him in the kennel, but we'd rather get better at his place game. He does sleep in his kennel every night and also for short periods of the day when we leave. I don't think it's separation anxiety rather than the fear of missing out.
So I agree. It's probably, you know, some FOMO. However, we pretty much treat it the same. So we want to hold your dog accountable to being calm when you're home, in place, and in the crate. So use the crate and use place, and make sure the dog is quiet and calm. Obviously not what George is doing right now. And so we really like, you know, using e-collars for this because you can use low levels to help the dog chill out. So, but practice putting your dog in place, and then have your family doing everyday things. Put the dog in the crate and hold them accountable. Feed your dog in the crate. Make the crate like its favorite spot, but also place. Place should be a really comfy spot also. Most of the dogs that leave the training program here, you know, clients will say, oh, my dog went to place all on its own, and they, you know, it's become their favorite spot. And that's exactly right, because that's how they learn how to be calm. And so it sounds like your dog needs some of that. Place is not just a command, it really becomes like a state of mind. It's how we teach dogs to be calm and be okay not being involved in everything. So I suggest using place and continue to work on that.
So I think of place too. I think of all the things that even with new dogs here, we have to remind our kids and us, like when they're in place, we leave them alone. Like that's their safety spot. So if you're trying to increase your place time and trying to keep them calm, I think that it's important to make sure that you're not interacting with them unless they're doing something that you don't want. Like letting them chill, giving them a good or a yes, like when they're being calm, but like not petting them and loving on them and that sort of thing, so that they can chill and know that that's their space. Am I wrong?
No, yeah, absolutely.
But then just duration, just like,
Yep. Yeah, doing it for long periods of time is super helpful.
suggestions on stopping jumping on strangers. Really struggling with this one. We've tried maintaining place until she's calm, but once we release her, the 6-month-old lab, she is straight back to jumping.
Yeah, so this is a great question. I think it's one that a lot of people struggle with is the jumping. First off, the jumping has to be corrected. There are some trainers out there that say to ignore the jumping, turn your back, have the guests turn their back. That doesn't stop it. There are other trainers that say tell the dog to sit, but then once you get the sit, most dogs learn jump and then sit, and then they get a reward. So then it's just a pattern of jump, sit, reward. And so that's also not helpful. So you're gonna have to punish the jumping. And you can do that a number of ways, however you wanna do that. That can be a bonker. You can use an e-collar, you can use a leash and prong. Whatever way is effective for your dog, you're gonna have to punish the jumping and tell them that's not acceptable. Other things to think about though is if your dog can't be calm with guests coming in, then it has to stay in place or it has to stay in its crate. It's not acceptable that it goes crazy when guests come over. Like my dogs typically, they're in the crates when guests come over just because I want to be able to interact with the guests and not worry about my dogs, but also interacting with guests is such a privilege, and if the dog's not going to behave, then they don't get to do that. So make sure that your dog can behave first and not jump. So practice that with other people. Practice that, I typically will entice the dog to jump on me and correct it, and then we move to guests. And just prepare your guests, say, hey, my dog, if it jumps, I'm gonna tell it no and correct it. It can be an uncomfortable thing, but you don't want it continuing to do that as it grows older. A 6-month-old, do we say lab?
Black
6-month-old lab is gonna be big, and so it can hurt somebody. So we definitely wanna stop that before the dog gets much bigger. Easier to stop now than later.
Yep. We're usually the ones that you let them jump on.
Yes, yeah, I use my family as guinea pigs all the time. It's kind of fun.
But it is one of the most talked about things that our clients want to be corrected.
Yes.
Jumping on guests and pulling on a leash. Those are the top two things, aside from like the actual like aggressive dogs that we've dealt with in the past. But like our manners based, it is jumping and pulling.
Yes.
Is there a question up there?
Buster says, classic Juno and Roxy, we've learned they don't have fun together. Having separate family time schedules has been the best for their attitude.
Yeah. Our girls don't, Reza and Sadie, they don't spend a whole lot of time together. We do the same thing.
Yeah.
They coexist, but they do not get along, yet we make it work. Absolutely. And that was all the questions that you guys had sent in earlier. So if you have any questions now while we're live, type them in, send them to us. Make Jess answer on the fly.
Yeah, we've only got a couple more minutes, but we'll give you guys a couple minutes to put your questions in if you have any.
Also, happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah.
It's Christmas Eve.
That's right.
Ask Jess if she's done wrapping her presents yet.
Heck yeah, I am.
Yeah, because you had Layla do it.
Oh.
She didn't wrap a single present this year. You did it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's everything wrong with that. And she didn't even go to the sticking them in a bag. She just had Layla do all of it. Didn't you? Didn't you? I don't think anybody has anything else to add for us tonight.
All right, y'all. Hope you guys have a safe holiday season. Get your vaccines, and we'll talk soon.
Wear your mask.